Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Now, this past week, we've seen American farmers get back into the field, really saw some planting progress, make some headway, more expected in the coming weeks. We also had an announcement from the Trump administration that was well received by our friends in the ethanol industry. Joining me now to talk about it is Brian Jennings. He serves as CEO of the American Coalition for Ethanol. And Brian, we've got an emergency E15 waiver. Is this good news for the ethanol industry?
Oh, Mike, it's critically important news. It's great news for the ethanol industry. We needed to make sure there was uninterrupted market access for E15 over the summer months, and we got that news right in the nick of time.
All right, so this is out. We can now buy more affordable E15 all summer across all of America. What does this mean for your members? Do they anticipate their grind to go up?
Well, market access is critically important. We have an oversupply of ethanol in the United States. We've got to find a home for that. We've got to increase demand. And so E15 year-round is one of the best ways, probably the quickest way to do that, Mike. And for every 1% increase in the ethanol blend rate domestically, we're going to grind about 500 million bushels of corn. So that's not only good for my members, more importantly, it's good for corn farmers who need that demand driver as well.
Absolutely. And so, Brian, now this is not the first emergency E15 waiver we've had over the past several years, is it?
Yeah, for your viewers, it's unfortunate we've had to go down the road of these emergency waivers, these emergency steps. But thankfully, both the Biden and now the Trump administration have been willing to take this to ensure this low-cost fuel is on the market. This would be the fourth summer in a row emergency action has been taken. Long term, you and I have talked about this, Mike, we need Congress to step in and update the law.
Indeed we do. And so what would the updates need to look like? Brian, is there a roadmap out there that you're watching for or pushing for in Congress?
There is, and we've been pushing for it for a very long time now. But I think we're inching closer and closer, Mike. There is bipartisan legislation pending in both the United States House of Representatives and the Senate, the National Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act. We have champions in Congress like Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Senate Ag Committee Ranking Member Amy Klobuchar working hard to try and push this over the finish line. And I've got to tell you, Mike, I think we're getting closer. It's a matter of when, not if, Congress finally adopts this legislation.
Now, Brian, we see from the consumer's perspective a number of advantages. With more ethanol components in gasoline, we've got lower price, we've got better air quality. Are those arguments having an effect on some of those coastal senators and representatives who maybe have been less inclined to support biofuels policies?
You know, Mike, you're right about those benefits to consumers. And we are starting to make traction with maybe non-Corn Belt members of Congress. Our members were just in Washington last month for our annual fly-in. We met with many members from California, New York, Florida, members of Congress, that is. And we pushed the clean air benefits and the low-cost benefits. And that's particularly important right now as costs continue to rise for consumers. And so that is an important selling point for us, no doubt about it.
If we can save some money at the pump, we can spend that money elsewhere, and maybe on some fine cuts of beef or something like that to support the ag industry. Brian, if we've got folks who want to keep up with what the American Coalition for Ethanol is doing, where would you send them?
They can go to ethanol.org.
That's an easy one to remember, ethanol.org. That's the American Coalition for Ethanol. Brian Jennings, its CEO, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks, Mike.
Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up on the ever-changing commodity markets at farmfutures.com. And this week, we're talking with Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Research. Mike, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good to be with you.
We continue to see these commodity markets buffeted about by world events. Let's dive into the corn market. Mike, did we have anything of note in export sales this week?
Well, I think a little bit. We stayed very strong on the export inspections. I've noticed that old crop, new crop spread continues to find support. around that 25, 27 cent premium to the July. That's healthy, suggesting that we still have too much demand trying to chase too little supply. And I think that's going to be a critical piece of the puzzle for corn and the price action in May, Mike, as we see now May in delivery. Deliverables were light and have been light so far. That's good. One note of maybe potential softening were the export sales on Thursday morning. Like last week in soybeans, we did see some net reductions in both corn and in wheat, but the price is coming down so much in corn and wheat. 1 week doesn't make a trend. I'm going to just keep an eye on it.
All right, we'll keep watching that, Mike. Now, we did get some news that the E15 emergency E15 waiver for the summer was granted. Is that something that you expect to have much of an impact on corn demand in these summer months?
I think it can. I mean, between the livestock weights remaining high and the summer gasoline prices being extremely important to what seems to me to probably going to be a very strained consumer this summer, supply demand fundamentals, both domestically and globally for corn, are the bright spot of the major ag commodities, minus the cattle market, Mike. And so I think that's just one more feather in the quill for the corn market, that we've got relatively tight ethanol supplies right now. And we've got a really nice program and policy shift that should keep some of the funds, I think, on the sidelines. This is one of those things, one of these time periods where kind of reminds me of the mid 80s and late 70s, where policy becomes very, very important. Obviously, talking trade, but also talking domestic sustainable aviation fuel and ethanol policies.
That's true. We need to have those demand sources here at home if we're going to keep producing the bushels. Mike, speaking of producing bushels, we had rain across much of wheat country this week. Prices have moved lower. Are we getting close to a bottom here in the Chicago wheat?
I think if you look at it domestically, we're probably about priced right with the increase in crop conditions we saw on Monday afternoon. I don't think we should go below $5 given the supply demand fundamentals domestically, Mike. What I would say, though, globally is I think we're very undervalued, especially given the fact that we've got extreme dryness in some parts of Ukraine's winter wheat belt, and also the wheat plains of China are getting noticed by the trade as well. So I think, unfortunately, a large chunk of why the corn market has fallen has been because of the wheat market once again. And how many times have we seen this since the top in that 2022 time period? Wheat really still is my leader to the upside. If we're going to have a really strong turn and trend more long term, I think it needs to start with the wheat market.
Are wheat traders still watching what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, or are they just waiting on the sidelines to see if there's a deal at this point, Mike?
No, my European colleagues are very much watching what's happening in the Black Sea, weather and also politically. And that goes back to the Russian ruble. There's a pretty good relationship, positive price relationship between a strengthening ruble and a strengthening wheat market. We've had the opposite up until about 3 months ago, Mike. I think this is really critical. We don't want the dollar to come back up. We don't want the ruble to start weakening again. In other words, we don't want the dollar to become a safe haven if geopolitics becomes mixed up again with this Russia-Ukraine peace deal happening or not happening. Probably the number one factor for ag commodities is going to be keep the dollar going lower and depreciating as we go through this trade issue.
Give us a little more leverage on the international scene. We'll be back with more from Mike Zuzolo at Global Commodity Research. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up on these ever-changing commodity markets at farmfutures.com. And we're discussing these moving markets with Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. Mike, let's talk about the soybean market. We saw cancellations, reductions in exports last week. This week, what's the trade watching?
Well, I've noticed this week, Mike, maybe a little more sensitivity with what's happening in China. One of the key indicators I keep track of is what I call the pork and bean trade. How do soybeans and hogs react to one another in their price relationship? And I've noticed a more positive price action, unfortunately, lower price action this week so far between the soybeans and the hogs. And that's got me really watching carefully what we're looking at as we get ready for this May WASDE report in the middle of the month, because we will get those new crop numbers. My contacts at USDA have suggested to me that if we do have tariffs in place, the World Agricultural Outlook Board will most likely look at those tariffs and try and figure the supply-demand fundamentals around those tariffs. I think that puts beans kind of in pole position to have the worst scenario as far as export demand reductions in 25, 26 compared to wheat and compared to corn. So I'm kind of laying the groundwork with clients and subscribers to have a plan of action in case we do fall pretty dramatically in mid-May, mid to mid-June, like we did back in 2018, the last time we saw something similar to this.
Now, Mike, the last time we saw this in that first trade war in 2018, would it take 3 months for soybeans to lose about 20% of their value?
Yes, and in fact, I went back and looked at the charts. In June of 2018, we had a high of 1026 and a low in that same month of about 858, or a month and a half. So it did not take long to really take that price action down. And I think that's one of the things that we really want to consider before that report comes out as to whether that's worth going after that potential for price reduction. On that year, I think we lost about 10 million metric tons net imports from China. And that was enough to really break that market hard.
All right. So are you selling the November here ahead of that May 9th date? Is that the plan?
Yes, we're working in the paper side of the equation right now, Mike's trying to stay away from a lot of cash marketing until we're safely planted, really wanting to leave that cash basis open, especially in areas where it's at a 5-year low, which mainly west of the Mississippi River.
All right, Mike, we've seen headlines out this past week that consumer sentiment is weakening, and yet we've seen cattle prices move back towards record territory. Where does the cattle market head from here?
Seasonally, box beef has a little bit of difficulty continuing its move to the upside as we get into mid-May. I think that April cattle was kind of the rocket fuel to allow these record highs. I would like a seasonal correction here, Mike. I think it'd be healthy going into summer grilling season. I think we're going to have a really strained consumer. And while U.S. GDP numbers earlier this week, you can make two cases for that number. The fact that it was negative is a red flag. And I think China's manufacturing number being negative is a bigger red flag. So we do have recessionary tendencies that are starting to build into the macro data right now. I think that's really important to the meat. And this is where the trade deals come into play, especially with the meat, especially South Korea and Japan. I really like to see some trade deals in the next 20 to 30 days.
Absolutely. Sell those high value cuts overseas and bring that profit back home to American farmers and ranchers. Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, indeed. Greg's been keeping his eye on these weather impacts around the country. And Greg, what are you watching next week in the Pacific Northwest?
Kind of a pattern shift. It's eastern flank that will, with time, make its way into the heartland as we continue to monitor the weather maps and charts for that building ridge of high pressure and probably the development and or redevelopment and or expansion of dryness and drought across at least the middle part of the country, the plains going forward later into this month of May and beginning part of June. Weak weather system offshore of Willamette Valley. The temperatures coming up. Opportunities for spring grain planting. They lead the state and the pack, that is that area and Washington State alone. Meanwhile, downstream opportunities for a little more spring grain planting as well. Wheat planting across the Dakotas coming off some pretty generous 1 to 2 inch rains of late. And we'll get a couple of spotty showers and thunderstorms on the eastern flank of this building warm, dry air mass across the Pacific Northwest and Intermountain West. It remains locked into position. Little, if any, organized moisture until maybe later in the period into the northwest, and a couple of spotty showers and thunderstorms, far more scattered and isolated compared to the organized rains of late into the northern plains and parts of the upper Midwest. A little weak system offshore of Southern California, the old June swoon in the beginning part of May, the low clouds, the sprinkle activity, the drizzle, and the mist up to the Bay Area with this upper air trough, maybe a couple of gusty thunderstorms, desert southwest, and just enough moisture and a slow movement to the upper air pattern. We're back into chasing showers and thunderstorms, this time over the high plains, the western plains, and don't need any more rain in areas off to the east of about a Wichita, Oklahoma City line. Little change in this pretty substantial trough for the time of year in the southwestern reaches of the country. Very El Nino looking here. The upper air pattern kind of fragmenting already, and a couple of showers and thunderstorms widely spaced, but locally heavy and severe, perhaps bearing some hail, some high wind into the high plains areas of winter wheat.
Northern Corn Belt farmers going to see a dry down next week, Greg?
Yeah, western and northern areas coming off some significant rainfall and a chill in the air, and a couple of areas of patchy frost, which may linger into the northern lakes region early in the week. But it's this weather system here, another one moving across the plains, that it's still these eastern Corn Belt locales that'll be slow to dry with outdoor work and field work. There should be some progress west and north, especially as the week wears on, with a pretty quiet weather picture, sunshine, seasonal drying paces, temperatures up above average or summer warmth building back across the plains, and still a couple of spotty showers into the eastern Corn Belt locales. But it's generally warmer and drier across at least the northern and western Corn Belt as the week wears on. It's just a total and complete washout across areas of central Oklahoma, the mid Red River Valley of the south coming off the recent rains, and it's a scattering of showers and thunderstorms with that system coming across the west into the Rio Grande. More moisture as well for the Tennessee Valley and areas of the lower Mississippi Valley there, and it's not much of a significant improvement. Moisture continues on, scattered across areas of the plains. Here's some heat as well building across the Rio Grande Valley. So in this perspective, Mike, at least for this time of the year, a little bit unusual. El Nino looking as well onto the southern plains.
As you cast your eye entirely to the eastern seaboard, Greg, what are you watching this next week?
Again, keeping an eye on opportunities to get out there and advance a little more corn and soybean planting as a whole nationally in pockets. If you add them all up, we've made some decent progress, but not much going on early in the week across the Midwest. Look at the plume of moisture, much needed with dryness and drought across the Northeast and New England, and we're still a bit unsettled into these lower lakes region, Ohio Valley locales off to the east with scattered showers and thunderstorms. Cooler air up into the upper Midwest, but some dry time roughly from the Mississippi River on westward. That's probably our best opportunity for outdoor work and spring field work as the week wears on. Over the south and southeastern parts of the country, it's a warm and hot and humid weather pattern. It has some 90-degree weather, and boy, things are hopping and a-popping from a growth standpoint down through Dixie. A little moisture building through Florida. This is welcome news in the drought areas of the mid-Atlantic region. Showers and thunderstorms, but they could be heavy and severe. The moisture does trail back into sections of the lower Mississippi Valley and onto the southern plains still. Little change. The frontal boundary hung up here. Scattered showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe across the Carolinas, but at least it's rainfall. Warm and humid dry time across the Gulf Coast and points on westward.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Yes, planting season is underway for America's farmers, but on our rivers and waterways, navigation season for 2025 is also open. Joining us now to fill us in on what's happening with the inland waterways is Tracy Z. He serves as president and CEO of the Waterways Council. Tracy, thanks for talking with us.
Thanks for having me. Always enjoyed being on this program.
Well, let's talk a little bit about WCI. What is the Waterways Council and what do you represent?
Absolutely. Waterways Council, Inc. We are a trade association that lobbies for the modernization of the inland waterways system. So what does that actually mean? The easiest way to think about it is lock and dam funding. We have about 175 members, very diverse membership, everyone from the operators pushing the barges, the shippers, such as everyone watching this program from the ABCs of the big ag groups to the grower groups. We get a little funky with our membership. We have America Skilled Building Trades. Every new lock being constructed right now is being done by America Skilled Building Trades. And we got some environmental groups such as Nature Conservancy and Ducks Unlimited. So eclectic group that usually people look at a little funky when we walk up to Capitol Hill together, but it's really been a successful partnership in making sure that we are getting this infrastructure modernized.
And I think it goes to show just how many of us across the country rely on these inland waterways, even if we don't think about them in our day-to-day life. Tracy, how big is our inland waterway system compared to the rest of the world? Do we have the largest network of inland waterways?
Yeah, we are extremely blessed here in the United States. We have 12,000 miles of fuel taxed inland waterway transportation system. So it really gives our farmers a competitive advantage in the world market, especially when our locks are operating and the river is dredged. We have about 200 locks and dams across the whole inland waterway system. So it's something, if you guys know Peter Zion, if not, I highly recommend you go read his book, The Absent Superpower. And it talks about how America became a superpower because of our rivers and our lock and dam system. Right now we have rockets that move on our inland waterway system that get transported down south and blasted off. It's just a unique competitive advantage that, a lot of people don't see. I grew up in Arizona where there is no rivers. So I didn't know about barges until I went to school up in South Dakota and went south and saw some actual barges moving. So
Yeah.
it's a great blessing. And if you haven't been out to a lock and dam, I highly suggest that you do.
It's always worth checking out. Now, Tracy, you mentioned it's an incredible competitive advantage for us to have these inland waterways, but they've got to be working. We got to have those locks in operation. We got to have the rivers dredged. From your perspective, what are the big issues in 2025?
Hey, I'm sure everyone cares about tariffs on this program, so I won't get into that one. But for us at Waterways Council, it's funding. It's getting the financial needs so that we can keep these facilities maintained so that, we have limited closures. The average age of a lock and dam right now is 59.6 years old. They were all designed to last 50 years. So life expectancy, luckily, back in the 1930s, these locks were built very sound. And they're still running, and the Corps does a great job at maintaining them. So, making sure that we're increasing our maintenance fund, why we are advocating to fund our new lock construction program. We have 4 locks currently under construction right now, but for the agriculture community, we have a big one going on the Mississippi River right now. It's Lock and Dam 25. It's going to be about a $2.2 billion project. It's going to begin construction. It's in design right now here in about 2 years. And that's going to add an additional lock chamber next to the current one and expand it from 600 feet to 1,200 feet. So it's going to make it more efficient.
Wow. And so that will allow multiple tows to come through the lock at the same time on neighboring chambers?
Just one.
Okay.
It'll just be one, but then you can pass back ways. But the good thing with the 1,200 foot, with a 600 foot, you have to decouple the barges. So it takes 2 lockages. This will allow us, or the operators and shippers, just pull all 15 barges into the chamber. It's estimated to save about an hour and a half to 2 hours each lockage. So our plan is continue to do this up the Mississippi River and hopefully, reduce the shipping prices.
Absolutely. The more you can get through, the fewer breakdowns you have to get those locks through, the less cost that trip is going to have all the way around. Tracy, as we think about kind of issues in the news right now, we do have higher water levels, particularly on the lower Mississippi River. Are there any concerns there at this point for shippers as they watch that territory?
This has been a pretty wild year from the high water standpoint, on the upper and the lower for the Mississippi, but also on the Ohio River, which 60% of all water on the lower comes off the Ohio. As far as the shipping, from safety concerns, operators are tying up boats and barges and making sure that, the crew is safe because safety is the number one priority. But we shouldn't have too much. It should be going fine.
All right. Hopefully some smooth sailing as we continue in this spring. Tracy Z, President and CEO of the Waterways Council, thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Thank you. Everyone have a good day.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Across the country, farmers are dealing with wet conditions or windy conditions, but eventually those will go away and spraying will commence in earnest. That means we've got to be careful for our pollinator friends. Joining us this week to talk about that is Katie Savinelli. She's on the stewardship team and serves as the pollinator lead at Syngenta. And Katie, thanks for talking with us this week.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So Syngenta is a part of the Be Sure Coalition. Katie, what is the Be Sure Coalition about?
Well, the Be Sure Coalition is really part of Growing Matters, and we've been doing this for 7 years. And our goal really is just to remind farmers and applicators during both planting season and spraying foliar applications to make sure they understand where the pollinators are, especially honeybees, as well as when they're planting, use the right lubricants, as well as covering up any seeds that spill. So it's really important to protect pollinators as much as we can.
Absolutely. Keep the whole ag industry working. Katie, what is some advice you have for applicators or farmers as we get into spraying season?
Well, certainly for farmers, the number one, and applicators, the number one thing is to understand where the beehives are located. There's different opportunities such as Drift Watch and Bee Check, where you can go in, find out, and then make sure when you're, or be sure when you're making the application that the spray is not going in the direction of the beehives.
Drift Watch and Bee Check, two of those services, Katie. And of course, for farmers with bees or working with beekeepers specifically, is there any more general advice you'd have?
I think it's really good that farmers know the beekeepers in their areas. Certainly it's a good collaboration, I think, in the rural areas and in farming areas. Having these connections, having these collaborations, having the beekeepers understand what farmers do as well as farmers understand what beekeepers do, it's really a great way to get more friends. And then also sometimes you can share, the beekeepers share honey at the end of the season.
There could be some side benefits as well to some kinds of cooperation. Now, Katie, when we think about why it's important to protect pollinators, what are the reasons you tell farmers and applicators?
The reason why it's important to protect pollinators is really pollinators are very important for pollinating lots and lots of crops, not necessarily corn or soybeans or wheat, but fruits, vegetables, and we all need to eat more fruits and vegetables, including myself. And so to protect the pollinators and have all of these bountiful harvests is really important, especially in the U.S.
Absolutely. It sure is, Katie. If we've got viewers who want to learn more about the Be Sure campaign, where would you send them for information?
The best place to go is growingmatters.org/Be Sure.
And that's Be Sure, B-E-S-U-R-E, not B-E-E, correct?
Correct. It's only one E.
Only one E on Be Sure. Katie Savinelli, thank you so much for taking the time to fill us in on the Be Sure initiative this year and how farmers and applicators can better protect pollinators.
And thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Earlier in the program, Greg mentioned the precipitation next week. And Greg, there could be some substantial totals for some.
Well, yeah, once again, back into the southern plains areas of Oklahoma, Texas, points out to the east. But we do have drier weather, dry time, less moisture materializing over the northern and western Corn Belt and with time into eastern sections. But a quarter, some spots south of I-70 could be upwards of a half of an inch as the week wears on. Look at the totals here of an inch or two across some of the drought areas. Downpours again, more flooding, and forget about some of these pasture lands and rangelands in through Oklahoma, and severe storms down through Texas, back into the high plains areas. Some significant moisture for the time of year and slow-moving storms that could be heavy and severe in the southwest. Spotty stuff up to a quarter inch into parts of the Pacific Northwest towards the following weekend.
As we get into the week of May 12th, Greg, what is the temperature outlook there?
Kind of get used to this look to the maps and charts here with this ridge kind of building across the middle part of the country. There's some 90-degree heat that is involved here and some pretty rapid crop growth and development. Warming of soils, things will be hopping and popping. If you're in an even keeled mode with soil moisture, things ought to look pretty good. Some pretty good drying as well over the eastern areas, warmth down through Dixie across the western part of the country. No real cold air in sight, but a little more action on the maps and charts. This is primarily eastern lakes region into the mid-Atlantic region and points along the Gulf Coast. This is good news with dryness and drought. Welcome dry time for much of the Corn Belt and western sections especially. Otherwise, back to below average moisture for the northern and central Rockies and Pacific Northwest.
Now, does that hot ridge stay intact for the week of May 19th?
Kind of weakens, flattens out, and we'll probably see that here in the next probably a few weeks. But here it is towards mid-May, and still some heat, if you will. 95 to 100 desert southwest readings in the middle 80s to low 90s per usual. cool. Gulf Coast areas, a little cool off of the northern Great Lakes region, maybe a patch of frost. Interior sections not threatening to growing operations, and there's a pretty good covering of showers and thunderstorms in that transition back to normal temperatures out of the northern plains, upper Midwest, the heart of the Corn Belt, down across the mid-Atlantic region, high and dry, and we'll need it by then. Southern plains and into the southwest.
How does it feel as we get into June?
Here comes the ridge, and we're going to begin to see this lock into position more and more now as we get deeper into the month of June. Stay here. July, I think it's to the Mississippi Valley. Cool weather for the northeast New England, and the scattered showers and thunderstorms are in the eastern Corn Belt, drying out across Mississippi, and high and dry farther west.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. This week, we're checking in with Mindy Ward. She's the editor of the Missouri Ruralist. And Mindy, thanks for speaking with us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit, how's planting or fieldwork progress looking across the state of Missouri so far?
Tell you what, Mike, it's wet. It's very wet. So we're a little behind when it comes to corn, but that's to be expected during this weather that we're continue to have. It's just rain after rain after rain. To give you an idea, we had over 9 inches of rain just in my house, and I'm not the wettest part of the state, and that's almost double what we've had in any other April. So it is extremely wet. Soybeans were kind of trending on the same level of what we did last year, so we're right on pace there. But you and I both know, as soon as that weather changes, warms up, we're going to be running. Those machines make it happen.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back in.
Farmers are ready to go. We just need that break in the weather. Now, Mindy, of course, as an editor here at Missouri Ruralist, you get the chance to be on the road quite a bit. I understand last week you had the chance to hit the Missouri FFA convention. How was it? What was the enthusiasm level like?
I tell you what, I don't know why I'm surprised every year I go, but I constantly am surprised at just the level of talent we have in that next generation. And those kids are so excited. I tell you what, if you're on TikTok, I am, if you're on TikTok, you need to run over there and see what Missouri FFA members did last week, to promote just their convention. It was amazing just what they sent out there for the world to see of what FFA members can actually accomplish. So it's really fun because, as you know, we write about these kids growing up. I giggled because the state star in agri-placement is McKenna Claiborne, and I visited her at her farm about 10 years ago, almost. And she was, I labeled her the Tiny Tycoons. Her and her sister sold sweet corn and sweet tea. And now she's just morphed it into her own type of business where she works alongside of her mom, and it's just fun to watch these kids grow and see what they can do. And we get to report about it and then see their success and their excitement about it. So it's amazing to go there. If you're ever looking for a place that you just feel like the world is, go to an FFA convention. You'll be inspired by the next generation, and they're ones that are going to lead us into the future. So if you need something to pick yourself up, there's a lot of hope there.
Absolutely. That is a great point. There is a lot of enthusiasm with those young folks in agriculture. Mindy, Missouri Ruralist, always covering those issues important to Missouri. Before we let you go, what's coming up? Why should we be checking it out?
Well, we're going to look at a little bit of net farm income. We saw a recent report out that net farm income is increased. So just due to government payments. And we're going to look, though, not only this year, we're kind of looking ahead to that 2026 to what happens when maybe those go away and how farmers can prepare for that. And so we have some good advice there from the MU and what they're doing in that space. So we're also going to be covering some diseases, making sure that we're prepared for tar spot if it comes around, the new one with corn stunt. So we're going to keep farmers and ranchers, up to date on what is the pest that are problems, the diseases that might crop up, especially given this wet weather that we're having.
That's what it's all about, keeping farmers informed is your job at the Missouri Ruralist. You do a great one, Mindy Ward. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
All right, thank you.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. Well, this weekend at Max's Tractor Shed, it's about the sign on the tractor. What does yours say? Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. For more than 40 years, our friend Vance Lundell has been making quality products to serve agriculture producers, not just grain producers, by the way. See the wide product line at LundellPlastics.com. You can follow them on X and Facebook and Instagram, too, the way we do. Well, check out the sign on the tractor. It may be very elaborate. Sometimes they're just simple. Somebody writes on a piece of paper with a Sharpie, and that's the information they impart to you. They can be very elaborate, though, large, colorful, maybe include the full tractor history there. Dan Meisner knows those signs very well. He makes them. Dan the Sign Man. Dan Meisner is a John Deere guy from way back. I featured his tractor in the tractor shed many years ago. He's based in Elk City, Oklahoma. Let's take a look at some of the signs he's made. There's no doubt about this Super A in Ohio. It's a Super A, all right, for this young man, Adam Learer. The Isom family in Florida has their sign on the toolbox on the side of their Alice Chalmers D17, if there was any doubt. Caleb Riley in Illinois is advertising Classic Green. So sometimes you do see logos, show logos on there. The Farrell family in North Carolina, David Farrell is smart enough to know that he needed to include Beth and Sarah on his sign. But now let the record show some signs are not accurate, like this one. The 4250 is not owned by, at least not owned by this Max Armstrong. But it's a reminder of the fun and the teasing that can take place among lovers of the old tractors. Here he is with his weekly report, our good friend Mark Stock from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. Please mark your calendar, May the 6th, for the No Reserve Premium Farm Equipment Auction. You'll find a 2024 John Deere 412R self-propelled sprayer. There's also a 2023 Fendt 937H self-propelled sprayer, a John Deere 410R, and a John Deere R4045 self-propelled sprayer selling. Late model tractors, a 2023 year model John Deere 8R 310 mechanical front tractor, John Deere 8RX 410 4-track tractor, John Deere 8400R mechanical front tractor, John Deere 8345R, John Deere 9560 RT. And then Wednesday, May the 7th, the Otto E. Luking Jr. Estate Sale, Yuma, Colorado. Selling late model Case IH equipment like a 2021 7250 Combine, Case IH Steiger 400 four-wheel drive tractor, Case IH 4412 Cornhead and MacDon FD 140 Flex Draper Head. There's a Case IH Early Riser 1235 12-row 30 stack planter, Case IH Magnum 340 mechanical front tractor, plus all the shop equipment and livestock feeding equipment. And by Napanee, Nebraska, the William Sadoff Retirement Sale consists of a New Holland CR 960 Combine, a big week of equipment selling on BigIron.com.
Our FFA chapter tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than its closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. We're getting to know the members of the National FFA Officer Team, and this week we're talking with Caroline Groth. She serves as the Vice President for the Eastern Region. And Caroline, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, what was it that made you want to be a part of FFA?
Yes, so I actually met my ag teacher showing sheep at the county fair. I can remember walking out of my first ever showmanship class, and my ag teacher, Miss Myers, stopped me and said, "Caroline, you have to join FFA." And I'd grown up knowing Miss Myers, and she was just an excellent leader in our community. And really what made me want to join FFA was the people. I didn't really know any students in my FFA chapter when I first joined my freshman year of high school, but I remember walking into the ag classroom my first day and just being welcomed and surrounded by the family community that FFA provides.
That is fantastic. And of course, that community and that family eventually propelled you to the National Officer Team. Caroline, what made you want to serve as a national officer?
I can remember I served as Kentucky FFA state president last year, and during the middle of our year of service, I can recall a conversation I had with our state advisor, Mr. Colliff, and he said, "Caroline, if you're not burnt out, done tired at the end of your year of service, I would absolutely recommend running for national office, as it'll give you another year of service." And I can remember after state convention just realizing that I did not want to be done with this leadership journey, that I wanted to continue serving FFA members across the country.
That is fantastic, and you've got some time left in your term ahead of you. We wish you the absolute best, Caroline, in working with those FFAers across America.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Chad Colby was out getting a little dust on his vehicle this week, seeing how farmers have married their equipment and their technology to get this year's crop in the ground.
This week in central Illinois, the weather kind of held off and a lot of guys were able to get in the field. I had a chance to catch up with the Unzicker farms here in central Illinois. Chad, you're planting soybeans. Sounds like you guys have had some pretty good running here this week.
We have. We've had threats of rain several times, but we've been able to miss that, I guess, good or bad, and been able to get quite a few acres of beans planted this week and in the last week.
What kind of conditions have it been? I know a lot of guys have been struggling a little bit to get their herbicides on just because it's been really windy the last couple weeks. But lately it looks like guys could even maybe use a shower in some places.
We could. I read a statistic the other day. It's the windiest spring in 51 years. That's definitely been evident this year with us trying to put our pre down for corn and our co-op on the bean side of things. So a break in the weather for the wind and the weather would be great for us. But biggest thing has been trying to manage, I guess, how far ahead we get on the bean planting ahead of our co-ops. So we make sure we get acres covered in a good amount of time. It's not too windy and not in the threat of rain. So.
You know, I know several guys I've talked to here getting through the weekend look like they're going to be about halfway done with both corn and soybeans, and a lot of places maybe even farther along in soybeans. Is that kind of where you guys are at? What are you hearing?
We're about halfway done with corn and beans. Another couple, I would think by the end of this week we could possibly have our corn done. Beans will probably carry on the next week, but yeah, we're a little bit over halfway on both of them, probably about 60% on corn.
You know, you were showing me your AutoPath and the technology you guys are using. Your dad even commented to me yesterday things have been working really well this year.
Yeah, knock on wood, we've had really good luck this year with equipment. It seems like we had the satellite RTK this year on both tractors, and that's been a big difference for us as far as having a straight path to the tractor to follow and the front wheels not trying to chase a signal. We've also had an implement guidance on both planters, and I feel like the combination of those things has made a big difference for us in a good way.
Well, Chad, I appreciate you taking a little time to visit with us. The 10-day weather here after this weekend looks really favorable. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. And folks, leave it here. When we come back, we'll take another look at a company bringing that technology to the world of agriculture. Digital technology in agriculture has continued to make great strides, and more equipment manufacturers are incorporating that technology with their equipment. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Brandon Montgomery of Fendt about their recent integration of PTX with their farm machinery.
With the PTX integration, that is now having a data platform. So before, be able to manage your data, so onboard, offboard control, the tasks and jobs that I set up now is all run through Trimble Ag. So if you remember, acquisition of Trimble Ag, we acquired 85% of Trimble Ag. That software program now with FarmWorks and Farmers FMIS software, they now have an option with us to be able to offboard automatically from the machine the data to a platform. And that is what's now standard for free for the customers to use that and to be able to run their operations in their farm.
But of course, behind that gold tractor, you've got more of the traditional Fendt green lineup behind. You've got some exciting news with the 600 series. Can you fill us in?
We do. So the 600 series, we launched that at Farm Progress last summer. That's a Fendt 620 that's behind us. We won an AE50 award on that. We're super proud of that machine. Everybody seems to want to go bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Bigger combines, bigger four-wheel drives, but we haven't forgot majority of our farmers that use these machines every single day. So this 140 to 200 horsepower category is a big volume market for us. So it's standard with Vario drive, it's got Vario grip option on the tires, Fendt One operating system, front axle suspension, air ride cab. It's the Cadillac of machines in this segment.
It's not brand new, but it's still very new in the Fendt lineup, and that's that 30-foot Momentum planter. There's a lot of enthusiasm for that. I know farmers have reacted well. What have you heard from the field?
So 30-foot Momentum planter, it was like a missing gap in our portfolio. We had 40 and 60-foot, but we didn't have a 30-foot. So what we took is that same technology, fully loaded, right? So load logic system, the weight transfer system, the vertical contouring toolbar adjustments. We brought all that down to a 30-foot, and it's all fully fitted with precision planting from the factory.
A lot of things to be excited about at Fendt, and of course there's still enthusiasm over those Ideal combines. Brandon, what can you fill us in? What's new with the Ideal combine?
So Ideal combine, we're still maintaining strong. Here, what we're showing here today is also auto dock and joystick steering. So we didn't just stop with joystick steering on the wheel tractors, we actually have it on the combines too. So we removed the steering column completely and you just steer with the left-hand side. Auto dock is a feature where you don't have to get out of the cab to hook up your header and unhook that. It only takes 15 to 20 minutes. You're checking things out. We've done it with the push of a button. So everybody's climbing up inside. They get that visibility. They can see what this looks like. And again, all these products are standard with Gold Star customer care. So we maintain all these machines for the fleet operation for our customers for 3 years.
Thanks to Brandon for taking the time to fill us in on the changes coming at Fendt. And I'll tell you, if you haven't looked into that Gold Star warranty program from Fendt, it is definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. Take care, everyone. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance, German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.